Welcome, everybody, to the WeatherXM YouTube channel. We're excited to introduce our guest, Stefan Rust, today from Truflation. And today we're going to be talking about the partnership between WeatherXM and Truflation. But first, Stefan, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and great to be here, and love what you guys are doing. Really, I think it's really similar to what we're doing. You're doing it with weather, we're doing it with economic data. So really find it super cool what you guys are up to.
Yeah, I'm thrilled about this partnership. I know you and I have been talking for quite a while about this, and I think it's finally coming to fruition in the next few weeks. But first, I know our community would love to hear more about your project, so maybe you can give us an overview of what Truflation does. And yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, we started off in not believing the government when they were telling us that inflation was only going to be transitory back in 2021. They printed $11 trillion worth of new money into the market, ultimately diluting the existing money that's already in circulation. And so what did that mean? That resulted in some 26% in purchasing power loss over these last 4 years with people that just held on to dollars. And so how do we pass on that message? How do we educate the market? What is inflation? Because ultimately a dollar is still a dollar, but what you can buy with that dollar drops in terms of the quantities that you can achieve, you can attain with that same dollar. And then number two was really just, it was so archaically calculated, right? So how do you hedge yourself against inflation? What is true inflation? And we just really set out to calculate this. We saw there was a huge 10x opportunity. And what we did was basically aggregate some 30 million items in the US market alone, where we are tracking the price movement of those consumer items. And they can range from the price of eggs to the bacon to the steak, but also to the gas at the gas pump, to the rent that you're paying, to the utility, the transportation costs, the flights, the buses. How do we aggregate that all together, make it transparent and visible? And then ultimately, how do we monitor and track the changes of those prices? And that's really what we do at Truflation on the blockchain.
Yeah. And so you guys are acting as a third party independent source for essentially CPI data. But so is the Truflation metric a little different than the traditional CPI? Like, are you measuring like many more inputs than they would traditionally, or fewer, or just different?
Yeah, so all of the above, right? So we update it every single day. The government updates it once a month with about a 15-day time delay. We track some 30 million items. We have 3 price feeds for every single item. The government tracks about 80,000 items. The government surveys households, how they spend the money. And what we do, 1,000 households, by the way, across the US.
Yeah,
And
sample.
that's supposed to be a representation of the whole market. And what we do is we do a census-based survey across where and how people are actually spending it across individuals, from credit card data to all sorts of other points of sales where we can track how people are spending their funds and their money. And we do this all on chain transparently, whereas the government does it all, with costing about $1 billion in annual budget with some 3,000 employees or something, all in a centralized smoky room that we don't know about. And so we just felt that that was ripe for 30x improvement.
Yeah, it reminds me of this conversation about, I think, the census and the
Yep.
cost to run the U.S. Census every year.
Yeah.
And I was hearing a bunch of ideas how to make it better, but this seems just like a no-brainer way to make consumer price information much more apparent. Just personally, I am curious. Like, so what is one of the major price feeds that you guys are intaking? Like, are you getting data directly from the grocers, or like who are the
Yep.
actual people? One of the like price feeds that you guys get.
So we get it from all over. We have a number of different sources. We pull it from APIs. We work with data aggregators. We get it from point of sale machines
Okay.
that are coupled with the goods barcode scanners that you go when you go to a grocery store. We get it from gasbuddy.com that tracks all the prices of gas. at pumps, across the whole U.S. Things like that. And Zillow, we get real estate data from Redfin, and yeah, we work with Amazon
Well,
for product pricing, um,
no,
Expedia for travel data, Kayak, etc., etc.
wow. So all the big players, yeah, that's great, and it's essentially live, which is a huge difference. What I didn't notice and realize until we started talking is many of the different podcasts or media shows I watch are now using your Truflation metric instead of the traditional, which I love. And so before I was just like, oh yeah, here's a Truflation data, but I didn't really put together like, oh no, this isn't the traditional one I am used to seeing. It's your guys' live index versus the old one. So I've been
Yeah.
excited to see you guys kind of take off and get more mind share.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think we've been around now for 4 years. Feels like 5, 7, 12. I don't know, but it's like, yeah, we've been around for a while, and so that gives us a bit of Lindy, and it gives us a bit of a track record. So number one, we're still here, and I think the market appreciates that. And then number two is we've been very accurate over the last 4 years, and we've been battle tested by big institutions, individual researchers, financial researchers, as well as technology analysts that are actually tracking a lot of these financial technical assumptions and calculations and algorithms. And so so that's actually, and it's really rewarding to see when you now have top tier fund managers and analysts actually come to and use just Truflation against the interest rate swap, against the 10-year yield, the 10-year bond yield, right? And things like that. So ultimately, we're becoming the benchmark that is a leading indicator in any investments they make in any of those categories.
Yeah, I mean, your guys' growth has been incredible, and it's like I said, it's been great to see. But I know maybe our community might not be familiar with you guys, so I don't know. Maybe you want to share a little demo or showcase your platform so that our audience can check it out for themselves.
Yeah, I can share it right now live. So here you can go to the website. You get a free visual of what's tracking. You can see all the other items that we track. And here you can then sort of load, you can see the US inflation's 2.404 in Truflation, but the government number will tell you it's 2.3%. You can compare it to the government numbers. So I can then look at the government number and you can see immediately how we compare against that while it calculates that. That's a new visual. There you go. But
Yeah,
now
this is brilliant. But yeah, this is essentially the. I know you guys have. I don't know how many indexes you guys have now, but the one I always see is this Truflation U.S. index, as I'm an American, I guess,
yeah.
and typically I'm hearing macro economists
Yeah, no,
talk
so
about it.
you can see it in aggregate view. So what's it been looking like since, over the period of time? How much have you lost? This aggregate view shows you roughly a 28% decline in purchasing power.
Oh yikes!
And I
That
think that's
isn't great
really
to see.
what scares people, right?
Yeah.
So, but the
What
beauty
what
is
happens when you expand that to 5 years? Just out of curiosity. Uh, oh yeah. That's
well,
not looking good.
I
It
think the
reminds me of that graph of
five
like,
was the 28% is actually 5 years. So there's just been some update to the system that this isn't quite. It is 5 years. I know it's 5 years because we track it on every new government that comes in. We start tracking and flooring it again.
man, man, oh
But yeah,
man.
the beauty is, yeah, so you can actually see how much you've lost. 30% of your purchasing power, whoosh, gone since compounded inflation since January 2020. So there you go.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And so these indexes not only are acting as information pieces, but they can
Yep.
also be like oracles. Is that right?
Right. And so that sort of comes down here. So you can see all the detail associated with it. So investors, Web3 companies, prediction markets, they all like to compare and see what is this about? What is the tick rate? How often is it updated? Daily. If you need an API element, you can contact us. But ultimately, you can then go on chain and see all of these data. So now you can see I've linked across to the Truth Network. So think of it like Truflation is where all the data resides, but and that is oil, right? So data is the new oil. then Truth Network is the refinery. This is where it goes to verify the data. It does the calculations associated with the data. You have verification associated with the calculation of the verified data. So ultimately, we try to do that. And this is all sitting on SQL-based databases. So this is PostgreSQL, and it's really easy for any developer to work with. It's its own chain, and we work with all the oracles to get it distributed into and onto different exchanges or onto other chains.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
here you can see this is the context of here's the Truflation US index. You can see all the compositions, the weighting. So you can see the three biggest categories again: transportation, housing, and food. And let's go into the food. You can see it's a composed stream. It's not a primitive. And so in food, there are two categories: away from home and at home. I go into the away from home element. So again, I'm breaking it down each time. I see the deployer address here. I see the tags associated with it. If you need more frequency, higher frequency, you can get that. But here you can then see all the different suppliers for the food category in terms of who's providing it. And then we have primitive data providers. So Numbeo would be a primitive data provider. And then, yeah, you have a whole bunch. But the
This
interesting one, I think, is eggs. So eggs, everybody loves our eggs index. I don't think it's on the Truth Network yet. But yeah, if I come here, share eggs. The price of eggs really matters. Everybody knows how expensive eggs are.
is a
$5.27.
it was a conversation in my household not too long ago. So
Yeah, and then here you can see we use multiple data providers, and I think that's really what the market likes, the fact that we're not singly dependent on one single source, but we've got 3 or 4 sources, and they all get composed into one stream. Yeah, and we try to average it out to, I mean, you have grass-fed eggs, free-range eggs, you have, industrialized eggs, you have mass-produced eggs, I don't know. And so how do we streamline that and put that into eggflation? And that's sort of what we've tried to do here.
okay, I mean that's quite interesting. So you have different products, all the different various eggs, and here you're kind of
And
okay.
then we try to aggregate that.
However, it is interesting, but the reason you have these different indexes is essentially they seem to be geography focused quite often, right? So like
Yes.
you have the U.S. inflation, U.S. egg, but then potentially different ones for Europe or countries,
Yeah,
right?
we did the US at the beginning, and we went really deep in the US. We spent about 3 years on the US just alone, no other market. And we purposely chose to do that. We wanted to be master at one versus a master of many, or a jack of all trades, but not really a master in any one. So we really honed our skills, our models, our references on the US. We moved to the UK because the UK was a lot easier, same language, was a highly digitized economy as well. And so we felt that we could really pick that up very quickly. It was only when sort of Milei's tech team in Argentina approached us and asked us if we wanted to do Argentina as well. So we looked at Argentina and we saw a big opportunity there, especially as their previous head of commerce department, the Minister of Department of Commerce, which does the inflation calculation in Argentina, was sent to jail for fraudulently reporting inflation. And so they were
Wow,
misreporting the numbers in order to manage the interest rates associated with the loans from the IMF.
that's that's crazy.
And so we
Well,
saw, wow, here is our chance, number one, to work with the government. And so we're working now with the existing and new Department of Commerce to help them bring data on chain, and
Mhm.
also doing more, yeah, sort of adding other components to it. So we become the external source of reference that they can use. Oh, here's our number, but if you don't trust our number, here's Truflation confirming the same element.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it's great to have that third party kind of almost audit, live audit of what's
Yeah.
really going on. But
And you can
I
you
was
can see
yeah, go
how it
ahead.
grew up here rapidly,
Oh
and
yeah,
then it really dropped. Since Milei came into power, sort of 2024, it's really just come down, and it's now hovering in the 40% range.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to talk more about work in Argentina because I know we are interested in getting some weather stations in South America,
Yeah,
and
that
Argentina
would
has
be
been
really cool.
on the docket. But as you've been showing all this, I
Yeah.
can't but help get excited of like what can we do with weather and indexes. I know we've had some fun conversations, but maybe you can paint the picture of how weather is maybe a key economic input in the traditional, economic space.
Yeah, so weather is quite a important ingredient. Number one, it has a big impact in you saw food is a really important category in every culture around the world, and spending in the food category is in usually in the in the 15% range on average. And so if it's that high, the cost and weather has a significant impact on food. And so there are ways to hedge and protect yourself based on historical weather data or accurate weather data right now, and now casting that weather data to be able to protect yourself against certain outcomes or fluctuation in prices. And I think that's really what I find exciting about the partnership, at least with WeatherXM and Truflation. Number one is how can we calculate and forecast better into the future how weather will impact the cost of foods, fruits, vegetables, etc., grain, you name all the agricultural products. And then number two is how do we then build out interesting products, financial products that allow everybody to benefit associated from outcomes even more than they do already, right? And so, so that could be the farmer directly, that could be a wholesaler, that could be a financial trader, that could be a buyer. So, how do we build out an economy for each of those participants?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thrilled. The fact that when you're clicking into your data, you can see where the data is coming from. I'm thrilled to potentially see that with WeatherXM as well, and see all the different stations and providers and how these indexes are being calculated. But like I think a lot of people are like, all right, weather, yes, it impacts food, but it also impacts natural gas prices, catastrophe bonds, insurance, and so I'm excited to see all these be on your guys' platform and people being able to see real time for example, if there's a major storm coming, they know that natural gas prices are probably going to be spiking in wherever that storm is hitting, right? And to be able to see that live on Truflation, I think would be quite amazing.
Yeah, and we've been talking about how we could do that, right? I mean, especially in sort of island nations that are heavily dependent and very susceptible to weather, situations. Taiwan, I think of Taiwan, I think of the Mariana Islands, I think of Hawaii, all or even up the East Coast, Miami, Florida area, right? I mean, you're seeing huge impact. The whole Caribbean, right? Everybody sort of has significant impact, or even fires in LA, right? I mean, the heat waves, right? How do they drive fire?
Mm-hmm.
How dry is it? I mean, all of those things are. I mean,
Yeah.
in a way, to me, it's like they're boring, right? Because they're just numbers. It's just a number, but in fact, it has such an interesting storytelling capability and element in it that
Mm-hmm.
how do we take that out and build stories around that and then allow people to predict an outcome associated with that in the future and then ultimately be rewarded for predicting it correctly.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely interested to see not only the historical data and what's currently happening, but being able to forecast that out, leveraging you guys's and our platforms combined. But I also can't help but think, it would be nice to hedge just running my AC for a day. I think we chatted a little bit about this before. I was looking it up. It's like, I think a little less than $5 to run my AC for a day. And so if I could have a little payout every time I ran my AC for the month, that'd be quite nice via Truflation or maybe one of your new upcoming products that I don't know if you guys announced um the index dot fun yet?
Fun, yeah. So we've been working heavily. It's going live tomorrow. We launched index.fun, which is an idea where we aggregate some 60,000 data feeds right now, and anybody can go and create an index, any kind of index that you want to. I think the Create is not live yet. We're having some challenges with the volume of data that we have. But you can see here, some people created a deadlift index. You have the Trump index. You have the hedge fund, the Truflation hedge index, which protects you against that. And then you can bet up or down very simply. So it's just predicting up or down, and you see your rewards. You see a nice breakdown. And so this is going live. I think tomorrow they're tweaking the final numbers. And then soon people will be able to predict, and then we'll have weather in here, right? So then you can predict the weather outcome. Will it be hotter than 37.5 degrees tomorrow? Will it be whatever? You can have the actual temperature. You could have sunshine, rain, etc. And then the validators and the verification comes from a composed index provided by WeatherXM contributors, right? So we can actually see directly which of the individual devices are providing and contributing towards that index resolution.
Yeah, I think this is super exciting. So not only are we getting the index and having an economic indicator that traditional economists can look at to view what's going to happen in commodities with respect to weather, but now you're actually going to have a place to put your money where your mouth is and determine if you can actually know what's going on at a better clip than the general public. So I think I'm thrilled and excited to see this partnership take off. I can't wait, and I can't stop thinking about it, to be quite honest, because I just want to be able to see not only the current weather, but then forecast it out, all the different types of forecasts as well. And I think what our partnership also unlocks that's unique is you can actually trade traditional weather right now in traditional finance. So there's HEDs, heating degree days, cooling degree days, catastrophe bonds, and the like. But I think what this is going to unlock is in the traditional finance space, weather derivatives has been pretty niche. And so I think crypto usually thrives on taking these niche markets and then, 10xing, 100xing them. And so that's kind of what I'm excited to see. But the way you're able to do that is global access. And through WeatherXM's global network, you can now essentially permissionlessly, so long as we have a weather station, have an HDD or CDD type contract anywhere in the world, which I find amazing. So you could make a market on a small city in Argentina, for example, leveraging your and our platforms together.
And I think that's what our goal is, to work together to really build that market and try and create it and allow the users to try and market it, package it in a way that is appealing and comprehensive to anybody participating in such products. But the weather industry, in just the derivative side of weather in the fiat world, is a $28 billion market.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, in the fiat world, it's nothing, right? Nobody cares about 28 billion. But I can tell you, in crypto land, that's a very interesting product that actually can be settled, resolved, and created a lot more efficient, a lot faster, and a lot more direct, and allowing anybody to participate in that market, and allowing any farmer, any participant, any buyer to be able to offset their exposure that they might have in that category, right? And we've been working really hard to get more commodities and agriculture projects on chain, more energy data on chain. Why? Because then all of a sudden that weather element becomes really important to map against the cost of energy, the cost of goods, e.g., the spices that you need in all your food and your cooking, e.g., the food that the fresh apple that you want to take a bite of after your workout or whatever, right?
Yeah, this reminds me, I think our first conversation, you and I were getting more excited, but I was having a few of these conversations. I think you're the first person who's like, oh, we need to do these commodity type products or similar on chain. And I was like, yes, you took the words right out of your mouth. And that's why I got so thrilled about this partnership. But, expanding the conversation, I would just like to hear more about, like, are you working with a lot of DeepIn projects? Are we one of the first ones that you're working with? And maybe you can give your thoughts on the DeepIn space.
No, I mean, I actually come from the IoT space, so Internet of Things area, right? So And what I found very challenging there was you always needed. I mean, I was the CTO at Energy Box. Energy Box, we were tracking electric items connected to any outlet, and we would then be able to then, number one, be able to recognize what type of device it is connecting to that electrical socket, and then number two is if there were change in patterns associated with that electrical device that might warrant a repair before and ahead of it
Mm.
breaking down. And if you're thinking about big facilities that have air conditioning or cooling requirements, or refrigerators, big Bucky's, right, was one of our biggest customers, where we were actually tracking all the cooling devices, all the gas pumps, so that the electricity wouldn't go down, or if there were fraudulent activities taking place on any of the items. And so in that process, though, and where I'm going with this is, it was really challenging to actually convince enterprise to understand the power of internet connected devices. And so what DeepIn has done, it has allowed it to be democratized and not wait for some gatekeeper, some purchasing manager at a company or enterprise to say, okay, we'll go. No, you can let the people decide. Do they want to go buy a device, invest in that device today, and then be able to amortize that a return, or achieve a return on that device based on the data you're contributing to the network? And I think I personally love DeepIn, and I think DeepIn is a real amazing use case. And we have done partnerships with DeepIn device companies, and some, yeah, but really early on, and they've been trying to more provide network coverage versus actually input of data. And now, for the first time, we actually have input of data. And we've been talking to another company that actually tracks sound. So we input sound, but I don't know what to do with sound, really. It's like, but with weather, that's why I think what you guys are doing is just such a brilliant offering in terms of, yeah, and just capturing weather data that we actually need, will use, and is something that we can emotionally relate to all the time.
Well, I think this partnership really does represent like a perfect combination of deep in. So, like you said, permissionlessly getting data that actually has economic value, and then connecting it with actual DeFi, where people can actually make money off of it, or hedge, or insure, or improve decisions overall, leveraging your guys' information platform. Because I totally agree with what you said earlier. Data is the new oil, and
Yeah.
so I think you guys have a great refinery for it. And I think being able the fact that DeepIn allows anybody to set up, if you want to now have a HDD or a CDD contract in the middle of nowhere, so long as you have a few stations using your platform and ours, now you can have that, which I think is quite amazing. But yeah, I think that's essentially, I guess the last thing maybe we can wrap up on is maybe your long-term vision for Truflation. Maybe you can give us an idea of where you're going, or some upcoming products, or maybe you could share some of the fun bets or speculative positions you could take on index.fun with weather data.
Yeah, I mean, Index.Fund is, I think we're all really excited about Index.Fund going live and seeing how the market responds to that. But I mean, yeah, my drive is really, I think all of finance is going to move on chain. And if not all of finance, more and more of it, right? Like we see in e-commerce. E-commerce has moved a lot of the retail activity onto the internet. Now, not all of it, but a big portion of it, right? And I think we'll see the same in on-chain activities, where more and more will move on-chain. As such, how do we build for a derivatives industry? What does that look like? I mean, that's really what gets me excited. The ability to be able to trade into the future, to be able to hedge, to build smart contracts, future contracts using smart contracts. Yeah, and then how do those get traded? Where do they get traded? With the rise of perpetual exchanges, we're seeing that with Hyperliquid, we see that with Drift, we see that with all these other exchanges, Aerodrome, and all these others that are allowing people to actually take future positions in markets, and prediction markets as well, right? There, ultimately, you're predicting where it's going, and so ultimately, you're taking a binary option in it's going to go up or it's going to go down, and you're making a bet today for something in the future. That to me has been the educational platform for retail to understand how futures work and how future contracts work and how derivatives are going to evolve. So how do we take the experience and the educational element of prediction markets and evolve those into perpetuals, into future contracts, into timed optional futures, right? So all of a sudden, we get more and more financial products. Literacy amongst the traders and the participants in and on-chain will grow. And as such, we'll see greater products in the market. We want to be a part of that. And we think weather is going to be an important element in that too.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself. We're excited for that future. I can't wait to see it unfold and totally agree with you. But yeah, where can our audience follow you and Truflation? Where
Yeah.
are you on
So
X
I'm
or yeah,
the real S Rust on X, and Truflation, truflation.com, truth.network. I mean, it's just Truth Network on X. Otherwise, those are the websites. You can go to truflation.com and to truth.network and index.fund. So lots to have a look and play around with. And very soon we'll see some interesting weather derivatives and products up there. Maybe binary
absolutely.
options first.
Absolutely. Yeah. Give him a follow. Check out Truflation. Stefan, really enjoyed having you on today. Appreciate everybody. Thanks so much and take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and see you next time. Thanks, Alex.
All right. Ciao.